on, everybody, and welcome to episode 32 of Off the Puck Hockey on the Fines Huddle Network, broadcasting over all major streaming sites. You can follow Off the Puck on Twitter and Instagram at Off the Puck Hockey. I'm your host, Tyler Fines, aka Finesy, and as always, my faithful co-host is here, Adam Stiles. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, how are you, man?
Yeah, how was the weekend?
Can't complain. Did some things with the kids. Went to the pumpkin patch today. Got our pumpkins.
Nice. We're going to talk about our little Twitter war that we had over the baseball this weekend and why I should never speak about baseball.
You need to be quiet about baseball.
I suck at baseball, I'm not going to lie to you. And we also got, obviously, your boy Mikey Walker. What's up, Walks?
Not too much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, what'd you get up to on the weekend that made you so excited to be here?
Well, I golfed and painted a bedroom. So
yeah, what'd you strike in golf?
We played a best ball match against me and the other coach for the Sailors, Eric Tobes, against a couple players. So I don't know what it ended up. We won the skins match, so that's all that matters.
Awesome.
How many beers were drank?
Well, look, guys, not many people know this, but it's actually women's hockey weekend, and you know what? Our distinguished guest is an Olympian, and what a better time to have a two-time gold medalist grace our presence other than women's hockey weekend. Author of her new book, The Role I Played. Please welcome Sami Jo Small. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited. Obviously, we've known each other a little bit just through the hockey world and through Laurie Dupuis, and the GM of Brampton, who introduced us a long time ago now. But we're really excited to have you on the show. How busy has your life been since you launched this book?
Well, it's it's interesting. I think for most authors, when they first publish, they do a book tour across the country. So you're on an airplane, you're speaking at all the different small bookstores to large bookstores in various different cities. So it can be quite busy, but that's not the case for me. The case is that I'm in my office doing book launches, doing podcasts, doing radio interviews. And it's a very different feel because while I get to talk about the book, I don't get to really see people, So I've done book readings and stuff, but you don't really see them on the other end. So I think it's a very different feel, but it has certainly been a lot of fun for me. I mean, I get to talk about myself. That's a lot of fun. But it's, I think, probably different than most first authors' first publications would go. But I don't really know any different. So I guess for me, it has been a lot of fun. And I don't really think it's hard work because you're talking about something you know so intimately. But it is fun to get to share some stories.
That's awesome. And you know what? I'm really excited to have you on. I told the boys before we hit record that Sammy's great. She speaks well. She probably should have her own podcast. Maybe one day we can get her to co-host with us on a couple shows and then draw a couple of those big name female players back into the mix. I know I've been trying to get Vikki on. We just haven't been able to get a time.
Well, especially Vikki with twin boys. I mean, that's the tough thing with women of my generation is we're so entrenched into our families now that it's trying to find some time that, the kids are either sleeping or doing stuff or you're taking them to an event here or there. So you'll find nobody more busy in the entire world than Vikki Sanahara. And if she's not busy, she's filling it with something else, volunteering for this or coaching this, or she's always doing so much in her community.
It's such a big championship last year, winning with Toronto University, Vikki and her, coaching, and I was so proud of her. She was she so deserved it, and obviously it's a huge championship to get that opportunity, and then obviously COVID hits and can't go to nationals, but we're hoping to have.
Yeah,
Vikki
I mean,
on,
she was recognized as Coach of the Year last year, which you're right, that was so well deserved. I think anybody that's ever played alongside Vikki or played for Vikki sees her passion for the game and. That she really, she sees it unlike anybody else. I mean, having coached her, that it's, she's such a incredible leader, but she also has this vision on the ice that makes everybody around her better.
Yeah, phenomenal.
Sammy, I was kind of reading up on you, and yeah, speaking of speaking well, you're one of like only about 500 people certified speaking professional, and that's worldwide. I read it as well, so that's pretty special. So just how special is that to you, and how exactly did you get into speaking?
Well, first, I appreciate that you read up on me. That's a huge bonus. So thank you. So to be honest, I never really thought I would be a professional speaker because I didn't know what a professional speaker did. I didn't know that could be a real job. So I actually went to university and studied engineering. So I'm a mechanical engineer by trade. And it was really when I joined the national team in 1998 at my very first Olympics that Team Canada, and really at any other major professional team within a community, is kind of forced to do community events. You're forced to sell your game. You're forced to go into schools and corporate sponsors. And during some of those visits, I realized that I enjoyed being in front of the crowd. I enjoyed sharing my passion for the game and for the game of hockey. And most of my teammates hated it. So they would always be like, Sammy, no, you do it. You do it. You go in front. You can speak. You go do it. And I don't know if they just, it was kind of a joke to them or what, but I think that that's sort of how I honed my speaking skills initially. And then people started inquiring if I would speak to their company or association. And it just kind of slowly morphed from there. Now, when I was after I graduated from university, I just assumed I would accept a job in mechanical engineering, become a product designer, which is what I had studied. And the job that I had sort of was vying for didn't come close to the amount that I was already making speaking. And I thought, this speaking, I didn't know could be a real job and people would actually pay me to go do it and that I could make a viable living. So I said to myself, I'll just do this until the next Olympics, because I'm sure at the next Olympics, the next crop of Olympians will take my spot. Nobody will be interested in my story again. And then I read this really great book by Tim Ferriss. And I don't know if you guys have listened to his podcast, but his podcast is awesome. And he, in the book, says, whatever you want to do, whatever profession you want to pursue, join other like-minded individuals and join your association so that you can find other people like you that you can gain valuable mentorship and insights from. So I joined this Association of Professional Speakers in about 2006 after my last Olympics in Torino. And I learned so much from these people. And I realized that the story of women's hockey is more than just a story of the 20 women that were on the ice. It extends into the corporate world and into the life lessons that we can learn through sport. Yep. And I just think that it really resonated with people. So it got me in the door two ways. One is that, lots of people hire male hockey players, alumnus, to go in and entertain their crowd. And there was sort of a revolution going on within the corporate world that they wanted some equality when it came to hiring practices. So here they could hire a woman, but still have those same really fun hockey stories. And so I kind of met two quotas, two check boxes, and that really helped with my business and helped elevate me to sort of that next level, in which I then pursued the certified speaking professional designation, which really meant that it was something that I was passionate about and was going to be my full-time job really for the rest of my foreseeable career. So my parents still ask me when I'm going to get a real job, but I just love that it's so flexible and I get to meet so many different people and hear their stories, not just about hockey, but about challenges they've overcome, and just learn about so many different people. So it's been really rewarding for me, and I appreciate you asking about it, because I don't often get asked about that side of my life and how I actually really make money.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So with that, like, have you ever thought about like kind of like some ladies that you've played with, like Spooner and Tessa Bonhomme and such, getting into kind of the broadcasting side? Have you ever been approached about that, or have you ever thought about ever trying to get into that kind of side?
Yeah, great question. I certainly love everything to do with broadcasting. And when I was a young girl, I dreamt of being a broadcaster. I did actually, when I was playing back in the day, when I played for the Toronto Arrows, so in the old NWHL, depending on who used to win the Ontario representative to go to the national championships, they would come seeking people from the other team to do color and play-by-play in color and analysis of the games. And so all of our games that were on TV, if we happened to have lost that year, usually it was losing out to Brampton, then I could do color commentary at national championships. So I did a bunch of national championships, NWHL championships, ended up doing some Canada games, really enjoyed it, and really thought that, this could be a viable career. However, once I sort of delved a little bit further into it, I realized that these women that are in it, they work really hard. It's their passion, and I couldn't continue to play hockey. I couldn't continue to devote myself to being a professional hockey player. And so, somebody like Tessa, she really got full swing into it after her retirement. Now she was doing some of it during her career as well, but it really got full bore into it. So to see people like Tessa, Cassie Campbell, some of my teammates that are doing so incredibly well, I realized just the amount of work that it takes to do what they do. And in chatting with Cass, like, she has to watch 2, 3, 4 hockey games a day, which could be exciting, but it's tough when you're either a full-time hockey player or you have a family, or so the deadlines, the amount of work made me realize that maybe this wasn't a pursuit that I was as passionate about as I am about speaking in the corporate world. So while I think I can dabble in it, by no means do I think that it's going to be sort of a lifelong pursuit like how good Cassie and Tess are. And I mean, both of them are just so good and so funny too, which I think they just make the telecast.
Yes, they are so good.
All right, that's a tough couple questions to follow up with there.
Here comes what's your
Adam
favorite
did
color?
his research.
Yeah.
Let's see how much
What's your
research you
favorite
did, Mike.
color?
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
No worries.
I was also researching a little bit and saw you went to Stanford. I played ACHA down there as well.
Sweet, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Who did you play for?
I played for Robert Morris University.
And it was ACHA at the time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool.
Just kind of life-changing experience for me. I was wondering how the experience was for you overall.
So just going to Stanford in general was amazing.
Yeah, kind of leaving Canada and then moving down to the States. Like, it's a different element all on its own.
Yeah, Mike, where are you from originally?
Port Dover in Ontario.
Okay, so yeah, small town, going to like college. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean, I came from Winnipeg, which we think is a big city, of course.
I've been out there as well.
Yeah, so when I got to Stanford, I had done well at school. Obviously, getting into a school like Stanford, you have to have done well at school, but you really feel like a small fish in this giant ocean, and you just feel like everybody else is so accomplished. But it's not really until you might have had this experience, Mike, until you really have the conversations with other people, and it's not until like 2-3 months after the fact that you felt this way, that everybody feels that way. Everybody feels like everybody else has more than I do, or is more accomplished, or can do this. And it was, I mean, going to Stanford was an amazing experience. It's like a country club. I went on my recruiting trip from Winnipeg, -40 in February, down to California. And right away I was sold. I was like, yes, I'm coming here to the palm trees. But it was also just such an amazing institution. So I was there at the same time as Tiger Woods. Chelsea Clinton was there, who was the president's daughter. I mean, we just had so many people of such diverse backgrounds, and the expectations were very, very high. Everything was marked on a bell curve, so that made school really, really tough. Yes. And so the reason that I continued to play hockey, I'd played boys AAA and AA hockey in Winnipeg, and the reason I kept playing was sort of as an avenue away from my real life. And I was on full-time scholarship to throw the discus and javelin there. So I was actually a track and field athlete, and they had a men's hockey team, and I, tried out for the hockey team, and we played in the ACHA, which is makes us sound really cool. We played in the Pac-10.
Hey, champion, Pac-10 champ.
Really? In what?
Go Dogs, University of Washington.
Did you go to University of Washington?
My wife's from Seattle.
No
and
way.
I coached in 2010, and we won the first ever Pac-10 championship for the school. That was my first coaching job. ACHA D2.
Not a big deal.
We beat Stanford, and we beat Oregon, and to go and win in the finals.
Oh, I don't know if I can like you anymore.
It's all right. I got the trophy. I'm good.
Well, we did play Pac-10, but as you guys know, who are ACHA super fans now, clearly,
yeah.
Nobody goes to California to play hockey. So I don't know if you guys experience it. Well, Mike, you're at Robert Morris. That's pretty legit. But University of Washington is sort of in the same boat as Stanford. That we had guys that had played D1 hockey, but because of the eligibility rules in ACHA, they were doing their master's or PhD. So
Right.
we actually had a Hobie Baker award winner on our team. We had some like really strong
Wow.
players.
Nice.
It's just luck of the draw, right? Like our first line of guys were these amazing guys. Second line of guys, probably like Minnesota born Canadians that are just there because of their academic prowess. And then by the time we got to our fourth line of guys, these guys had only ever rollerbladed in their entire lives. So this was like, it was like a glorified men's wrestling team. Like it was such good hockey and such horrible hockey all at the same time. But to me, that's what made it so fun. Is it was just like every weekend you got to travel with these guys, and I just kind of, my track and field coach just didn't even know that I played hockey because the practices were so late at night, and it didn't really come to sort of a head until the ACHA Nationals were at the same time as my first track meet of the season. And it's sort of the first time that I had to like even tell the coaches that I was playing hockey. Like, can I just, miss one? But you're on full scholarship for track and field, so that was tough. But for the most part, my direct coach in track and field was pretty good about allowing me to play hockey because he could see that it really helped me mentally to just get away from school, get away from the pressures of being a full-time scholarship athlete. And I think, many of my best memories are from that team and just the, shenanigans that you get up to in those kind of leagues are very different than if it had been like serious and professional. But I think I needed that. And I think that that's really the only reason I kept playing professionally into my 40s until I was 42 is because I didn't have that pressure. I see a lot of the girls now that play D1 hockey, and while it's an amazing feat, I just, it seems like so much. It seems like so much, so young. And a lot of them don't play after that, especially if they don't go on to play professional. That's kind of the end of their career. But I feel like, and maybe Mike and Tyler, you guys can attest to this, that in leagues like that, it makes you just develop these friendships that just make hockey so fun. And I'm so thankful that I got to play on that team. And there's some stories in the book about playing Stanford men's hockey. And Tyler, you haven't read it yet, but there's this great one about at University of California, Berkeley.
Playing the small barn.
What's that?
The tiny barn.
So no, they used to play in this. It got torn down. I don't know if it was around that time, but it had barbed wire around the outside.
Is that where hold on? So if you were playing in the game, Sammy, when I was coaching and we were playing UCLA Berkeley, the fans are like right here. Is that the barn?
Yes, they're part of your bench. They're part of your bench.
Yes.
And then one end is like an outdoor scene from like Frozen.
You know what?
It might not have been the same rink.
I don't know because the one rink that I'm talking about down in California, and I'm pretty sure it was UCLA.
So this is Berkeley. This is University of California, Berkeley. So UCLA is Los Angeles.
Okay, so then who am I confused? Sorry, you know what? Then I got confused. But one of the rinks that we played in California, when you're standing there coaching, like I literally can smell the beer because the kid is sitting like right on my back.
Oh yeah, and like kids could sit. It was like it was like a skate mat, basically stairs, and they could sit with you if they wanted.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. There's some.
But there were so many rinks like that we played in that were just like.
But we played some great ones. Like we played in Anaheim, and we played at Anaheim's practice facility, which was
that's where so that was the UCLA rink.
Yes, that's right.
Where UCLA played.
So I'm pretty sure the Berkeley rink is the same one we're talking about. But I remember that it was just wild.
Like and so the bottom of the boards too. What's that?
Was it busy with fans?
Oh, it was packed. It was like jammed.
Ours was jammed.
Yeah, and the around the base of the boards at Berkeley was painted black because it went with the scene, which was terrible for goaltending. Did you guys, Tyler? Did you ever play in Arizona?
We never got there. That was the one year that they ended up leaving, like pulled out of the league for that year. But we ended up playing that was the one year that they didn't. They weren't.
They were so good. We would get shellacked so bad, but they had like 5,000 people at the games.
Yeah, they were packed, and like even playing at the University of Washington. I mean, for people that don't know that are listening to this, University of Washington hockey is older than the football team. and their football team has put out more NFL, like it's so many NFL players, but not many people know that fact. So for us to win their first championship in with my first year coaching was awesome. And we had a couple.
Yeah, Washington was terrible. Both Washingtons were terrible.
Yeah, well, the coach that was there, David Kell, when he brought me on, he said we got a couple kids that played like WHL hockey and they've sat your ear and they're going through to be brain surgeons. So I'm like, oh, so they got a bit of a brain on them, and which is rare in hockey. And all of a sudden now I'm coaching these kids, and every time I walked in the room, still to this day, I'm like, I'm the dumbest guy in the room by far. I'm like these kids are absolutely brilliant already. And I said, my only claim to fame with them that separated me was that we were walking back to campus one day and there was a PlayStation tournament going on and I ended up winning it. So I set the tone. I set the tone right there and said, everyone understood. But Sammy, you know what? You got this book and I've really wanted to talk to you about it. So tell me how the book kind of started. Like where'd you get the idea and how'd you execute it?
So it began as, the idea was that, I am a professional speaker and that speakers have a book at the back of the room that they sell after they've been on stage. So the idea was, you speak from the stage, you give this keynote, and then people afterwards buy a $20 book and they leave with it and you make a little bit of extra money. Now, I started to write this book after the 2010 Olympics. So that was 10 years ago. And in writing the stories and getting it down on paper, I realized that this was much bigger than just a back of the room sales book. It was something that I think needed to be out there and it was a place in history, a time in history that not too many people know about. And a lot of people know our team and how successful we were, but not too many people know the actual people and know what these women went through to be able to play on this team, and really what the daily life was like for us as what we would say professional hockey players, full-time hockey players. So I wanted the rest of Canada, the rest of North America to know these amazing women that went through so much, whose names maybe were forgotten to history. And that can include that does include the U20 women that I played alongside with at the Olympic Games, but it also includes the girls that just narrowly missed making the team, as well as my club hockey teammates, which, as you guys know, those are the ones that you go to battle with. Those are the ones that you go through the whole season with. You're on those long bus trips with. Those are the ones you really get to know. And so I talk in the book not only about winning and losing Olympic championships, but also about club team championships, because those are really, for me, were just so special, because those are the girls you just get to know so intimately, and those are really your friends for life. And so I wanted people to know about them, and that's sort of how the concept of the book got bigger. And in that realization, after I had my first manuscript in the first year after Vancouver, I realized that I was a terrible writer. So that was one thing. I needed to go back and take some courses on how to actually write. I'm an engineer, so very technical. And I wanted the stories to really resonate with people. I wanted to bring the reader into the story with me. And so I had to rewrite basically the entire book. And I wanted the stories to be accurate as well. So finding history about women's hockey is difficult. And so I had to do my research. I had to talk to my teammates. My mom basically videotaped every game that I played. So I had 100 Betamax and VHS videos that I no longer had a VHS video machine. So I had to get those into MP3 players, and I had to rewatch all the game tape to make sure that the way that I portrayed each game was accurate. The ups and downs of our trials and tribulations just took a long time to be able to get down on paper. And then I had my daughter, and I was still playing for the Toronto Furies at the time. So life just kind of the book took a back seat, and it got put on a shelf. And it wasn't until she went to kindergarten that I finally dusted it off and thought, maybe I should sell this to a publisher. And did that about a year ago, got in with my publisher, ECW Press, who has been awesome. But you get into this funnel. So you kind of start about a year out, and slowly but surely your launch date comes. And so there hasn't been too much rewriting in that time frame. There's been some editing, of course, but you're working on the book cover, the typeset, sort of all the minutia of the actual book at that point, that they really walk you through and hold your hand as you're figuring all that out. So it's been a really interesting process because I didn't really know what it took to publish a book. But now that it's out there, it's fun that other people are starting to read the stories and getting to really know my teammates, which is awesome.
Yeah, and just quickly, I know the boys are dying to ask some questions, but I looking at the picture in your background there is now. Did you take that for the book, or is that an old one?
Yeah, so I was trying. It is a new one. So
Okay.
I was trying to decide. The hardest thing was what gear do you wear, because as a goalie, the gear that you wear really designates a time in history, a time. So like whatever jersey I chose to wear, that reflects that Olympic Games, and so it was tough I had so much during the photo shoot. We just did this photo shoot in January, and during the photo shoot I had so much gear at the rink. I was at the Mastercard Center, or the Ford Performance Center now, and I brought like 4 hockey bags worth of different goalie gear, just to kind of get it right. But it was Heather Pollock, who actually is a photographer for the CWHL, does a ton of women's hockey games, and I just really loved her work. So she did this, and then we did a ton of different sort of types of photos, but this is the one that the publishers like the best, and so you got to defer to their judgment. At first I didn't really love it because I didn't love that it kind of showed the whole. I wanted a more of a close-up, like on the mask. That was my idea, like just sort of see the eyes and not be able to necessarily tell the gender of the athlete. But in the end, the publisher wanted it to have the Hockey Canada logo. Obviously, that is going to sell more books. Yes. And they like the way that the full body looked as opposed to just kind of a close-up.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you enjoy the whole writing process, and like have you got any kind of feedback yet from it? And then also kind of tack on to that, you kind of said it wasn't that hard writing, but what was harder, writing a book or starting in the Olympic Games there?
So those are very different.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's unpack that. Starting with, did I enjoy it?
Yes.
It was. I certainly enjoyed it, but it was, when I say it wasn't hard, I guess it wasn't the pressure-packed scenario that playing hockey would be. So I didn't have a deadline for myself. I think as a writer, that kind of helped. I didn't really have a timeline that I was working with, so I never really felt the pressure of the deadline. But when I started to write from a first-person narrative perspective, so like really going through the moment again, I imagined myself in the scenario again. So say I was in a game, or say I was sitting on a bus, whatever it was, I imagined myself in the scenario. Yep. And so I'd write from that perspective. And when I was writing about games that we won and were really exciting and were big championship games, I would be at dinner that night. My husband would be like, "You're so like, what happened today? What did you do? Like, you're so excited." And I talked about this game that we won 20 years ago, and it just had changed my mood. Yeah. And then other times, if I had written maybe about a game that I didn't play or wasn't chosen to be the starting goaltender, or I got pulled, I'd be at dinner and be so angry. And my husband would be like, "Did I do something? Like, is everything okay?" And like, "Yeah, I got pulled like 15 years ago and I'm still mad about it." And so it really, it played with my emotions for sure. And so I think he was happy when I finally finished writing that. Yes. About the roller coaster of emotion that the poor guy had to go through with me was not easy, but it was like reliving it again. Yeah. But it was really cathartic for me. So it really allowed me to experience the emotions and to have perspective of me now in my 40s, looking back. Absolutely. To realize, what was important and maybe what wasn't as important. And as athletes, I think we're gunning for, our goals so passionately that sometimes we forget what is going on in the rest. We forget perspective. So it helped me to have perspective. It helped me to understand the coach's decisions that were made, which weren't always easy, but it helped me to understand where they were coming from. And my goalie partners that, often in this book, my goalie partners were vilified because I want the reader to be cheering for me. I mean, it's a book about me. And so, it makes me realize that while I was friends with my goalie partners and I had a ton of respect and admiration for them, there, were times that were really hard between us because we're competing for these same spots. And so I think in writing it all, it gave me just such a better perspective of them as people and all their good qualities and their good traits, and rather than me just like constantly competing with them. So I think that part was really good. So overall, I really enjoyed it. For sure, I enjoyed the writing process. And then what was the one that you tacked on to that? What was harder? What was harder? Writing a book or
Like
going to the Olympics? I would say it's so different. I would say that this, I think if you are a full-time writer and you're a professional writer, that's very different than what I just did. What I did was a 10-year process that probably a professional writer would do in under a year, but that would probably be way harder. The way I did it, is more of a project, and there was times that were difficult, but by no means were they, you're falling off your bike puking hard. Yeah. So that's more what training was like for the Olympics.
Absolutely. And you all vilifying your kind of parent. I was also a goalie growing up, and with all the kind of the goalie movement, I've never seen it before in the NHL kind of going on right now. And you see a lot of veterans kind of moving teams, and you see like the Holtby going to Vancouver for like the young stud kind of grooming Demko, and Washington with Lundqvist and the Samsonov there and things like that. Do you have any kind of experience like that where you were either the young one coming in and you had somebody kind of groom you, teach you things, or vice versa, you were kind of on your way out and you taught some younger goalie coming in?
Yeah, for sure. I should have known that you're a goalie with the Bauer and Potvin jerseys behind you.
Yes.
Wasn't much of a goalie.
Hey.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many pucks you stopped. You're once a goalie, always a goalie.
Yes.
Oh God. Yeah. Get out of here with that. Let's keep
So I was certainly placed in both of those positions. I think when I first joined the national team, Menno Reaume and Leslie Redden were the two goaltenders. And I had looked up to Menno for a long time. She had played professionally for the Tampa Bay Lightning, which happened when I was about 14 or 15 years of age. And then to join her then on the Olympic team was sort of awe-inspiring for me. I would watch her and Leslie and just see all the moves that they made and just watch how they practiced. And I really felt like they were two very different people, but always really supportive. I never felt like they were wishing me ill by any means at any time, and could see me as the young goaltender, perhaps not a threat. I was the third string goalie to them. Yeah. And so they shared much more than I had ever asked, and allowed me to, participate more than they had to. So in seeing that, I really understood what it took to be a mentor. That it isn't just taking somebody out for beers at the bar. Yeah. It is really helping them through the minutia of techniques as a goaltender. It's giving them time in the net. You probably know this, Adam, as a goalie, you can be the person that just, sticks around for too long and gives nobody else a chance to be in the net. Absolutely. But in a 3 goalie rotation, it is up to you to see what the other goalie is doing and ensure that it is equal. They didn't have to make it equal because I was the third goalie, and it isn't always equal for the third goalie, but they seem to go out of their way to ensure that happened. Nice. So that was sort of me coming into the program. Then another situation happened when I was went from the Brampton team because I used to play for Brampton. I don't know if you knew that, Tyler, but I went from Brampton to Toronto. And it was, there's a whole chapter in the book about how it happened, but the Toronto team was very successful. They had been dominant within women's hockey for a long time, and they had a goalie by the name of Kendra Fisher there, who herself had already experienced a lot of success and was fighting for a spot on the national team. So she was part of the bigger pool. And so me coming in there was likely not an easy scenario for her. I mean, sure. Me coming in as, a goaltender that was going to be sharing the duties, and the coach, we had Ken Dufton at the time, and he told us that it would be, what's that?
Kenny Dufton.
So he told us it would be shared and equal ice time for the two of us. And he really held to that. So, if you played in one big championship, the other goalie would play in the next big championship, however it happened. It didn't really matter. It was, I played one game, she played the next game. And that can't have been easy for her because this was her team that she had led to many championships prior. I came in as the Olympic goalie, and I say in quotes, and yet she accepted me, and it, as goalies, you don't often get to see the other goalie. I mean, they're in the other net most of the time. Generally in a dressing room, they're in the opposing big stall, wherever that happens to be in a locker room, and you're fighting for ice time with that goalie. But I think two things in that scenario. One is that Ken told us this is the way it's going to be. So the competition, I think, was almost taken out of that scenario, which is a little bit different than how a lot of coaches do it. And we could kind of just support each other. And so, we would laugh and joke with each other whenever the coach brought us in and, try to take some pressure off each other. And during games, really just be able to support, because you never felt like that other person is going to be taking your job or they're going to be taking your games. You knew your game was coming the next game, and vice versa. So I really admire that in her, that she was able to accept me on the team. And while she probably had some inner turmoil, I mean, that's a natural human reaction, of course, she never outwardly showed that to me. And that was really impressive to me. So that taught me a lot about having goalies coming in underneath you or beside you that are, want the position just as much as you. And then at the end of my career, with the national team, I had Shannon Sabados, who came in, and we were often goalie partners at various tournaments and stuff. And, she was this young hotshot coming in who had already played in the WHL for the Tri-City Americans. And we all knew that. But Kim St. Pierre, Charlene Labotte, and myself had been the goalies for the last decade. And so, her coming in and me sharing duties with her at, say, a Four Nations Cup or at camps, that wasn't always easy, because she performed very well, and you don't want that other goalie to take your spot. But because I had gone through what I'd gone through with Kendra, but also with Manon and Leslie, I realized that I'm only going to be as good as she pushes me to be. And I think that that's, a good goalie tandem doesn't necessarily have to be best friends, but they have to push each other to be better. And I think I learned those valuable lessons early, that it's easier to be nicer to the person. It just is a much more fun environment. And so I hope that Shannon saw me as sort of a mentor in that space, because I really, we roomed together on the road, and you try to help them with, I mean, she was like 17, 18 years old at the time. Yeah. And you try to help them with, just life on the national team and what it's like, and, what time to show up for breakfast, and let's walk down together. And rather than leave the person feeling like they're an outsider, you try to embrace it and just, go with it. And it's the coach's decision. It's not that other person's decision, ultimately.
Absolutely.
Mikey's got some good goalies down in Dover.
Yeah, you're talking to one of them.
You're another goalie. Oh my God.
You're a goalie too?
I'm not a goalie. No.
Oh my God.
I was a defenseman.
That's a goalie's best friend.
That's right.
He was my best friend.
I got one for you here. You've won kind of the trifecta with a Olympic gold medal and a world, the IIHF one, and you've also got a Clarkson Cup. Kind of what does that mean to you? And I guess which one in its own separate way meant the most?
By far the Clarkson Cup.
Well, it's funny because I think the media puts a lot of onus, or not onus, but a lot deems it to be a very high accomplishment to have won these three things. But the reality for me is that, I mean, the Clarkson Cup, of course, having worked so hard in the league, I understand the value of the Clarkson Cup. But before the CWHL, we had the NWHL, and before the NWHL, they had other leagues. And what I find maybe a little bit irksome when they say that you're part of the triple gold club is that there are many women before me that were part of that as well, that won their North American Championship, or whatever it happened to be called at the time, Abby Hoffman Cup. and perhaps aren't recognized. So I think that I won that when I first won my first national championships with the Toronto Arrows. And so after winning the Clarkson Cup in 2014, maybe we won it as a team.
Yeah, it was the year before.
We had already won many other national championships. So to me, it wasn't really this, while I love my team and each team has its own legacy for sure. To me, that wasn't the big accomplishment that others saw it as, because I had been already around the league for 15, 20 years at the time. So we had one prior that, was a big deal for that team at that moment. But for me, it was just, I think it was our fourth or fifth championship, or sixth. I'm not even sure.
Oh, easy.
Yeah. Sound like them announcing Tiger Woods.
Right. Yeah. I don't. You don't keep track.
It's just Phil Jackson over here. Just
That's right. You don't keep track at this point.
Yeah.
But it used to be very convoluted in women's hockey, because we would have a club team championship and we would have what was either a North American or national championship with the exact same teams that you'd play. So you play a championship twice a year. And so one team could win one could win the other. And in fact, the very first year of the CWHL, we won the national championship. Brampton won what was the Clarkson Cup at the time, the CWHL championship. And so we are not considered to have won the Clarkson Cup. And so it was just very convoluted in women's hockey. So, okay, so back to your question, Mike. What do I think about being part of this Triple Gold Club is very special. I think each championship that I was a part of, I have very different feelings about. And each team was really special. But the ones that mean the most to me, obviously as a goalie, and Adam can attest to this, are the ones that I played. That just makes a big difference. And while I was incredibly proud of the roles I played on the teams that I supported and maybe sat on the bench or sat in the stands to watch, it's not the same as when you actually are the goalie that is winning the championship. So I think some of my favorite memories are from winning national championships with the Toronto Arrows. And I write about one in particular where we were down by 2 goals in the third period and scored 2 shorthanded goals to win. So that was really special. I think that was one of my favorite ones because it was just so unexpected. But then also winning a world championship in overtime in Mississauga here, like that was pretty special because my friends and family could come. They're from Winnipeg, so they could actually fly. And most of the time, we played overseas or we had played in Europe. And so having them there for that moment was really special as well. And, being a goalie that wins in overtime is just pretty cool. So it's those are the ones I think that I remember the most. Well, I think the people from those other championships are what I really remember the most.
Yeah, it's funny, Sammy, Lori Dupuis, obviously my GM in Brampton and friend of yours. She always had great stories, and I'm looking at your book in the back. I'm like, I can't wait to read this. But tell me a story that is not in your book.
Well, I can tell you 1,000 stories.
Okay, well, let's hear. I want to hear a good one because listen, the one thing that I've emphasized all the time is, women's hockey and men's hockey. Yes, they're not the same, but nothing changes in the fact that you still train the same. You still train the exact same amount. You put in the same work, and unfortunately, you don't get the dividends. But the stories are very similar. But people just don't get that, and they see an inferior product, which is not even close. And you have to be in it, and you have to be in it to understand the dedication that you guys put in. So the reason I said that is, like I said, I just want to know kind of if there's anything in that book that you would have really liked to put in, good or bad.
So. I can't tell those stories because they.
We're a podcast here. It doesn't matter. This isn't TSN.
So I sent the manuscript out to teammates, and there were some stories that and some incidents that they preferred to not be in the book, so I took them out. I wanted them to have the first right of refusal. I also didn't want to throw anybody under the bus in a tough situation, and I didn't want to share anybody's story that maybe wasn't willing to share. So. If there was a particular relationship or there was a particular feud with a coach, and they didn't feel comfortable sharing that. I didn't want that to be part of the book. So, you know, I didn't want something to be in there that anybody felt uncomfortable with. But there's some pretty funny stories in the book. The only stories that I had to cut that I was, you know, pretty sad about cutting were some of my, and I flash back in the book a lot to me growing up. And so if I'm talking about perhaps going into overtime in a championship game, I'll flash back to a scenario where that might have happened in a different sport growing up. And so I kind of take some life lessons through these flashbacks without really passing judgment. I just want the reader to sort of know why I was feeling what I was feeling. And so some of the stories had to get cut about sports that had this same lesson. So for instance, I wrote a story about my volleyball championship. We won a provincial championship in high school. And, you know, I'd gone through 4 years with these girls. I'd gone to most of them I'd gone to kindergarten with and had been with all the way through. And we won this championship from a small school in Manitoba. And that was a really big deal. And I talk about those feelings being the same as winning an Olympic gold medal. Like the feelings are exactly the same as any major championship. Just, you know, when you win a Worlds or an Olympics, there's so many more people watching. So you can share it with so many more people. But that excitement, that elation is the exact same. So, you know, I wrote the same kind of story about volleyball, but I also wrote one about water polo and playing with my brother. And we had won a provincial championship, but it was kind of the same kind of deal. Do you play water polo, Adam?
No, but I heard I was again reading and researching that you dominated in water polo.
Sammy, if there's anything I can tell you about Adam, is he's going to know everything about you, and you don't know a thing about him. He will know, like literally, he'll know everything about you. And the next time he sees you, he's going to talk about it.
That's what's kind of strange about the book now, is that so many people now know a lot of like small minutia details about my life. So it is a little different.
Sammy, I think you were actually before you answer, I think you were at the All-Star game at the Air Canada Center. I don't think you were playing in it in 2015, 2016, maybe for the CWHL. I can't remember.
I mean, I probably would have been there if I wasn't playing. Yeah.
I think I actually am looking back. I actually think that I introduced you to briefly because
so we're old friends.
Or yeah, you're buds now. Yeah, I think so. I think it was through Lori, obviously, but
nice.
But yeah, no, so yeah, you guys are buds.
Yeah, so I guess those are the stories that had to get cut because they had the same lessons. But what was hard for me is that then that meant that all of those people that were involved in those teams also got cut from the book. So those are the ones that I think I was most sad about, but was kind of hardest for me is I had to, I couldn't just keep sharing all these stories. They needed to have a point basically to them. And often they had the same point. So
if you're the author, Sammy, who's the player you want to do a book on with no rules?
Laurie Dupuis.
Yes. You're just saying that. Are you just saying that, or is that actually? Are you?
So I don't know if you know that I lived with Laurie. We were roommates.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, so we lived together. So I have just a ton of respect for her. But that whole Brampton crew of, Laurie, Jana, and Vikki, and just sort of that whole crew of girls that have come before and after them, that would be a very interesting book. I think those girls like to have a good time.
What would you call the book? What would be the author off the top of your head?
Well, they all have just achieved such excellence on like a world stage in everything they do. You know, it's they really have this ability to see the game and give back to the game. But they haven't lost their friendships and they haven't lost their loyalty to each other, which is really special within sport. And they've always liked to have a good time. You know,
they love the silver bullets, love the silver ice cold bullets. You gotta keep up with them, or they'll just leave you behind.
Yeah, I think my transition from Brampton to Toronto, my liver really appreciated it. But no, I mean, what would you call that book? I don't know.
That'd be a great trivia question if I had enough followers on Twitter.
Pursuit of excellence while still having fun, something like that.
Oh, that's actually pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Oh, Sammy, and painting your mask is kind of a big thing in being a goalie, and you kind of get to express yourself a little bit, say a little bit about yourself or whatnot. Do you kind of have any favorite masks that you did over the years, or yeah, any special ones that you?
That's
Can...
such a goalie question.
I love it. It's such a goalie question.
That's such a goalie question. I love it.
So I mean, I grew up in an era, I don't know how old you guys are, but I'm 44. So I grew up in an era where we didn't have masks. We had helmets. And I think my favorite helmet was, it was like the Cooper one, you know, with the side things on it, the Eric Lindros that you could like make bigger and smaller. And you could, as a goalie, you could get this like Jofa addition to it. So you got these Jofa like plastic things would go over your ears and then down below. It was like such a weird contraption. Looking back at pictures now, those are my favorite pictures because they're just so hilarious. That,
oh yeah.
And it wasn't until college that I got my first helmet. And I actually painted my first helmet myself. This was before we knew anything about CSA standards or anything.
Yeah.
But I was at Stanford, and in engineering, we had to take an art class because I was focused on product design. So we had to take an art class. And one of the classes was design something about the Stanford sports, something like that. So I painted my goalie mask, and I mean, I just painted it with like dollar store paints, literally, and then wore it for 4 years at Stanford. So that's maybe my favorite.
Yeah.
And then with the national team, we actually didn't get to take our helmets home for the longest time. So my first like 5 years on the national team were just generic helmets that like the guys from the World Juniors and the women's under 22 team would also wear. Like we didn't get to keep a helmet. And I didn't really have the money to buy my own like Team Canada helmet, like some other goalies would do and get it all painted up, but I never did that. So my very first helmet that I got painted myself was probably the one that's in the picture, which is my 2006 Torino helmet. And then being the third goalie in Torino, I never got to wear it and show it off like I wanted to, but I had a giant discus thrower on the side. And so it was the Roman statue of a discus thrower, Discopolis. And so I thought that was a cool homage to my track and field past, and kind of came full circle with it being the Olympics in Greek and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff.
Nice. And yeah, playing AA and AAA, you said back home in Winnipeg, and playing with the boys kind of when you started, because there really wasn't any girls organized hockey, and then kind of to playing obviously pro and growing up to where you are and seeing where the women's hockey game has came to, just like kind of how happy are you to see where it's came, and how much more does it have to give? Yeah,
it certainly has made such huge progress in the last 20 years. For sure. It's been amazing. And really in the last 40 years, I talk a lot about it in the book, about the remembering our history, because I think that often we get saddled with negative thoughts in today's day and age. I want to say with what's going on with women's hockey at the pro level, there's frustrations by many people, and lack of positive hope for the future. But when I think about it, I think it's really exciting, because I think the distance that we have traveled in the last, 20, 40 years is huge. And when I started playing, it was unacceptable for girls to play hockey. 40 years later, you walk into a rink and there's a little girl with a ponytail, you don't even think twice about it. I mean, it's just is so much a part of our fabric. Yeah. The numbers have just shot up astronomically. When I first joined the Olympic team, there was no scouts across the country. I mean, I was on scholarship for track and field at Stanford when I joined the Olympic team. So just at that level, the amount of opportunities for girls now in the game is incredible to see. And so these young girls with the opportunity not just play at the Olympic level, but even just locally to play with girls, and to then play on rep teams, and to try out for provincial teams, and to play at the Canada Games, and under 18 nationals, under 22, get scholarships to university. These are all amazing things. And while women's professional hockey here in North America might be on a bit of a hiatus, or be in this sort of weird holding pattern at the moment, that doesn't mean that women's hockey worldwide isn't also excelling. So tons of countries now have women's professional leagues where girls are getting paid salaries to play in, which is amazing to see, and just the opportunities for not just North Americans, but countries around the world. And I often tell the story that the team watching the Vancouver Olympics, and Canada beat Slovakia 18-0 at the Vancouver Olympics. But that Slovakian team that lost 18-0 could have beat our 2002 Olympic team that won the gold medal. I mean, they were just so much better than we were. I mean, that's how far international hockey has come. Yeah. And that's what, I try to really reiterate to people that you say, oh, there's only Canada and the US are the only good countries. Well, we're the ones on the top, yes, but we have worked incredibly hard to have to stay there and to have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, because all these other countries are also getting so much better worldwide. And so that just means that Canada and the US have really done their due diligence to, look at everything from the technical game to the physical game, and just constantly strive to do more and more and more. And that's impressive to see. So despite the fact that there is some stuff going on at the elite level here in North America, I still am so excited by how far women's hockey has come. And I think what's exciting about this time now in women's hockey history is we can take it any direction that the players want it to go in. And I think that that's what it'll take a little bit of time for them to agree on where it wants to go and where they want it to go. But just the fact that we are able to have this conversation is exciting. Just the fact that they are able to now stand up and say, we deserve more. That is a huge step, because we would have never been able to do that 10 years ago. So I try to look positively at the future. And I think that there's some incredibly bright minds that are involved in women's hockey. And I'm just excited to see, as a fan, what comes next. And girl, there's a lot of other things that can be going on in your world. So really, taking that moment when you do step on the ice. And I think Jennifer Botterill does this the best, is she just makes sure that she smiles every time she steps on the ice, so that she can remember what it was like to be a young girl, just going on the ice for the first time, despite all the pressures and everything. And I think that that's where we excel, is when you love doing something, you're just going to get better every time you do it.
Awesome. Well, listen, Sami, it's been a pleasure having you on here. I know you've got a ton of books to sell and a lot of podcasting over the next little bit, but obviously just knowing you and having you on here is special for me. And I wish you all the best success with your book, and more importantly, your speaking and just your family.
Well, thanks so much, guys. And I really appreciate the amount of research and effort you guys went to this. So I am super appreciative. I hope you guys like the book, and best of luck with everything.
Yep.
Thanks very much. Once again, this is Off the Puck Hockey with your host, Tyler Fines, my co-host, Mikey Walks, Adam Stiles, the Dover Boys, and as always, our boy, Matty Huddle behind the scenes, our producer. And again, this is episode 32 of Off the Puck Hockey on the Fines Huddle Network. Sami, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you very
See
much.
you later.
Guys, Sami Jo Small, everyone.